Hello, I am Jennifer Benoit, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker as well as a coach. And today I'm here to talk to you about 8 strategies that you can use to co parent with a narcissist. So let's start off. First and foremost, you want to adjust your expectations. You might have had these very rosy, kind of like idyllic expectations that everything would be hunky dory now that you're no longer together and things will be perfect because you both love your child and things will be fine. But the characteristics that they displayed while you're in a relationship with them doesn't necessarily stop simply because you guys are no longer together. There are different tactics that they might use in order to make things a lot harder than they have to be. And so you want to make sure that you're able to have an adjusted, idea of what co-parenting will actually be with this person long term, not just banking off of when times are good, or even when times are really bad, but really just taking stock of who you're dealing with, right? The second thing that you want to keep in mind is that you want to communicate in ways that they will hear you. So, narcissists are notorious for not being great listeners. Like they simply just make you feel oftentimes like you're talking to a brick wall. You might have said the same thing over and over again, and it fell on deaf ears while you were in a relationship. So it's not going to change now. So the way around that is for you to communicate in ways that they will actually hear you. So that means you're not necessarily appealing to their empathy, because obviously their EQ, their emotional quotient, tends to be really, really low, and that's not going to be something that lands in terms of feeling what you feel, or even that being the thing that causes them to initiate some kind of action, right? You also want to make sure that you don't necessarily use passive aggressive means. So speak directly. What is it exactly that you're trying to say? What is it that you need? Because the passive aggressiveness, well, it doesn't work with most people anyways, but you want to make sure that you're very clear in your communication. But most importantly, that you are appealing to the thing that moves them. So, for example, in a conversation about your child's and about your child needing to go to a specific school. If you have objections, you might not say, well, I have objections because I just feel it in my gut that this is not a good place for our kid. That would probably be something that they wouldn't even consider, right? In terms of a factor. And so you instead would want to say, well, this school doesn't necessarily meet the list of criteria that we were looking for according to the things that we outlined as what was important. So then now they're listening to you from different ears because it actually involves something that has to do with what they want. And so you have to kind of reframe the way that you are having these conversations, unfortunately and fortunately, because you are able to, really get into weeds of things that you can easily end up going off into a whole nother world in conversations with narcissists if you don't keep it on track and really understand what the goal is before you're communicating about certain things, and you stay on track with how you're going to communicate that. The next thing to keep in mind is that it will be really, really important for you to have at least a few trusted individuals to talk to, because along this journey, there will be moments, inevitably, where you will be asking yourself, am I crazy? Like, is it me? Did that just happen? And so you want to make sure that you have, it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but trusted individuals that you can vent to, that will give you maybe good advice, or maybe just listen, that will pour into you, that will help you to feel as if you have a safe space, because being able to talk through things with this co-partner, this co-parent, might not be feasible. It just might not be possible for you guys to work through these things by having a civil kind of healthy adult conversation. So instead, you might have to be able to just pause when situations and conversations get too heated with your co-partner, and allow yourself to vent with an outsider. And I say trusted because obviously this is still the father of your child or the mother of your child. And so you don't necessarily want to talk to someone who's going to talk to your child or have this conversation like go other places, right? It's important that you're still maintaining a safety for your child's sake around these kind of conversations. Another thing to keep in mind is that, again, going back to the ways that a narcissist might show up, they might tell you today that they will do X, Y, and Z, and then tomorrow they might not feel like it. And their emotions might take them to another place in terms of what they are willing to do. And so you want to make sure that you have everything in place in terms of a structure around scheduling, around payments. You want to make sure that the more structure, the better, right? You want to make sure that there's things in black and white, whether that's actual legal route or just kind of like more informal modes of like texting. And so you can reference that as, well, see, this is what we agreed to, or remember, this is what happened. You should definitely make sure that you have that to go back to in the moments where this person might be telling you, you never said that, that never happened, or where are you coming up with this stuff? You will have the opportunity to kind of go back and say, well, actually, remember this. And it doesn't have to be, as something where you're rubbing it in, just like, well, you might have forgotten, but this is actually what happened. Because we want to remember also the communication style of narcissists can be pretty not great, right? In terms of confrontation and conflict, they tend to go to places where they'll stonewall you altogether and you won't be able to like get through to them. Like they're literally just kind of walk out. And you might not get a response from them for however long, or they act out in rage. And you don't necessarily want either of those scenarios to play themselves out for the sake of your child or children. And so you want to make sure as much as possible there are safeguards in place. Another thing that you want to make sure that you do is, I think this is along those same lines, is maintaining healthy boundaries. And so when you're able to make plans that work for the both of you, it helps everybody involved to feel like they are a little bit more safe. And by safe, I mean emotionally, right? So if by coming to your home, this individual causes upset or disruption in some kind of way, the boundary can be, hey, we're going to meet up at the park in order to exchange our child because this arrangement doesn't, and you don't even have to go beyond that. Let's just meet up at the park. This is what I'd like to do from now on, right? You don't want to necessarily go into conversations that go beyond parenting, because it can be a slippery slope where you fall into like familiar patterns and you put your defenses down, you put your guards down, and before you know it, that can be used against you in some kind of way in the future. And there is a tendency, right? With narcissists, there's a charm aspect to them. There's some magnetic kind of appealing thing about them. And so it can be easy to fall back into just a familiar rhythm. But more often than not, it can lead you down a path of regret, where you end up saying something that can be used against you, or some sort of manipulation, or just like altogether feeling as if this beautiful thing just happened. We just had this great moment, and then you turned around and raged out on me for something that just wasn't worth it. Like, did that even matter, right? And so in order to protect yourself, you just want to make sure that you're aware of the love bomb / hate cycle that plays out, and that you're also able to just kind of have those lines in place so that those lines don't get blurred. You also want to avoid mudslinging. It can be really easy, if you have a co-parent who's a narcissist. It can be really easy to want to go as low as they go. And specifically when you have children, you want to make sure that you are always keeping them front and center and not doing things that can hurt them. And so if this is an individual who is talking about you negatively in front of your kids, and you want to say, well, actually, your mom is a narcissist and she does da 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 da, you might want to refrain from that, because at the end of the day, this is still your child's parent and your child loves the both of you. And by sharing this type of information, it doesn't necessarily make your child feel better. It's a way for you to protect yourself. And so sometimes you will take the L in order for your child to be protected. And, there might be moments where you have to defend yourself, but you want to do it without going into that back and forth, that mudslinging. And you might have done that in the course of your relationship with your ex, but look at where it led. Like, I don't think it probably led you anywhere positive or healthy. And so that's not going to change now. And the stakes are so much higher now that you have kids. Another very, very important thing for you to do as a co-parent with a narcissist is to constantly pat yourself on the back, encourage yourself, give yourself praise, give yourself acknowledgement, because you might not necessarily get that from your co-partner or your co-parent, rather, because of the fact that they might want to either bash you, they might not see you, like simply just don't see you, and that kind of like positive affirmation, you're doing a good job, or, showing grace for the times when you don't show up as your best, that has to come from you. And so it's incredibly important for you to take care of yourself, for you to prioritize your needs. When you are not with your child, let's say they're with the co-parent, give yourself time to fill your own cup, because then you are able to be so much more patient, so much more present, so much better as a parent when you're able to fill your cup. And also, again, you're in a very unique situation, and co-parenting with a narcissist will drain you. And so you need to be able to give yourself everything that you need to overflow that cup. Not just fill it, but like overflow it. And to tell yourself, I am doing a damn good job, because you might not hear it anywhere else. And last but not least, this is something that you should do whether you are co-parenting with a narcissist or not, but get your financial house in order. So there might be things that you guys have already set in place, to kind of like be responsible for financially. But there are things that come up, in the course of parenting that you don't expect. And so when you're co-parenting with a narcissist in particular, you might not have that same kind of relationship where you can count on them for certain things, or rely on them to kind of pick up slack, right? When it comes to your child or otherwise, you might be behind on rent, or you might need something that's going to affect the household. But narcissists are notorious for also engaging in financial abuse. When it comes to a narcissist, there tends to be very unique relationships that they have with money, because money goes beyond just a means to an end. It also often represents ways that they're able to assert control and power. And so, and also, a lot of their identity is tied to what things look like on the outside. And so being able to have money and assert their money in certain ways allows them to feel better about themselves. And with that being said, when they are asked to part with money, or asked to take responsibility for things that they don't necessarily want to, it can be a problem. It can definitely be a problem. And so you just want to make sure that your financial house is in order as much as possible, always. But even as a solo parent, and specifically as a co-parent with a narcissist, you want to make sure that you're very, very intentional about saving, about having money for more than just a rainy day, but that you are just planning things out as much as possible and doing your best, right? Obviously, everyone has things that pop up that you just can't expect, but you want to make sure that you are definitely moving intentionally with money, and keeping your financial house in order as much as possible. So those are my 8 tips for co-parenting with a narcissist. If you're watching this video, you've likely already joined my mailing list. And if you haven't, I encourage you to. Like, what's the holdup? I definitely want to continue to provide more resources. So please go ahead and join the mailing list, and stay tuned for more. Bye.